Hello, White Tigers. This is Amia Gary with White Tiger Interviews. Today we have Mr. Murz, which is our world history teacher here. And Mr. Murz, can you tell me a little bit about your journey to becoming a teacher?
Yeah, absolutely. So I actually have a very interesting relationship with education. So most of my family were teachers, and I didn't really think about that until after I'd started teaching. Like, man, I've got sisters. My mom was a teacher. My grandfather was a teacher. Originally, when I was raised, my dad told me, you can do anything you want. You're such a smart child. The only thing I don't ever want you to become is a teacher. He goes, they make no money. Their jobs have no purpose.
Mm-hmm.
Do anything but teach.
Mm-hmm.
And so my whole childhood, I wanted to do engineering. And I realized that it was a lot less glamorous than I thought it would be. And I realized that I had kind of always had a passion for teaching and learning in general. And I decided, despite what my dad said, I think I want to be a teacher.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So can you tell me what inspired you to teach world history specifically?
Yeah. So once I knew I'd wanted to be a teacher, I was in my first semester of college, and I'd wanted to make that transition. And there were two kind of criteria I wanted to meet. Is one, I realized through starting engineering school that I hadn't actually really used my brain in a creative way since I'd started college, and that was making me very sad. And I thought, I'll be good at teaching whatever it is that I choose to study, but I wanted to pick a content area that, traditionally needs a little more love. People typically have the view of history classes, oh, it's, the boring
Right.
one, dates and names. And I want to show it's way more than that,
Oh,
and kind of
definitely.
bring that love to the subject.
Right. And I know that you're newly graduated. So what was it like being a college student and a full-time teacher at the same time?
So, believe it or not, it was actually pretty easy. And the reason I say that is, so when I was in college, at one point I was working 3 jobs and going to school full time. And so and having a relationship, a church relationship, and all sorts of other things. So I was already very good at juggling a million things all at one time. And so when I decided to start teaching, I went from having 3 part-time jobs that I was having to navigate schedules and 3 different bosses and everything else to it's all consolidated into one.
Oh, wow.
And so it was pretty straightforward, and I actually had an easier time with it. Obviously, trying to navigate the learning curves of being a teacher with also a student was a little interesting, because you go from one where you're the main authority in the classroom to
Right.
being I'm the pupil, right? And
Right.
so trying to balance those dual roles.
Wow, that's really great. And how has your teaching style, since this is your first year, over the past couple months, how has it changed, and what have you learned worked and didn't work in your
hmm
classroom?
Yeah, so as far as worked and didn't work, and this one was very surprising to me, is most of my students do not like projects. They don't like group projects. They don't like fun activities. I remember in one of my first months of teaching, I tried to do a fun review game with my American government students. And so we were supposed to be doing a skit recapping the Constitutional Convention. So what do you think was happening when they were arguing about how the foundation of our country is going? Create a skit. And not a single person in the class wanted
Oh,
to do that. And
wow.
I was like, what would y'all rather do? And they go, just give us an essay. I
Mhm.
would rather write an essay. And I was like, really?
Mhm.
And that was so shocking to me. And so kind of shifting my teaching style to the needs of the students has changed a bit. And I think specifically in world history, my style has shifted as the content has gotten more modern. I think it's shifted a bit from, doing more activities to learn these basic things to experiencing the history through primary sources. And so we see that with, well, like today, my students did a primary source reading on what children were experiencing in the Industrial Revolution. And to me, that's so impactful, because I can tell you all day about, these things that happen, but for you to be able to read about it, I've noticed it sticks with the students a lot more. And so I've shifted in that direction.
Wow, that's great. And what has been the most rewarding part of teaching so far?
Ooh. Honestly, I think I'd be hard pressed to find one particular thing. Um, I love being a teacher. I didn't think I would love it as much as I do, but I absolutely love it. There's some days my students laugh at me. I'll be sitting at my desk while they're doing work, and I'm like, y'all, I'm just so full of joy today, and I'm just in such a good mood,
Mhm.
because just being here, and every day I go to work and I realize I'm doing what I've been dreaming of doing, what I've been preparing to do for years. And that in itself is so rewarding, and being able to pass that knowledge on. Granted, it has gotten me into trouble once or twice.
Mhm.
I took one singular day off of work last semester, and it was
Mhm.
for my own college graduation. And as I was leaving, I was going to lunch with my wife and her family, and I called my wife and I was like, I kind of miss the kids. I wish I was at school right now. And she's like, what? You had your one day off and all you're thinking about is being back at work. And I was like, I just love it so much.
Oh,
So.
wow, that's great. And I know that along with teaching, you're leading the Fellowship of Christian Athletes. Can you tell me a little bit more about the mission and what do you hope your students gain from being a part of it?
Yeah, absolutely. So the main thing I wanted to bring God, I wanted to bring Christ into this school community a bit more and show people all that a relationship and a growing relationship with God can offer. It's a huge part of my life. Not arguably, it is the most important thing in my life. And so having an avenue where I can share that with the students and have them, openly discuss it amongst themselves. And so I want to, one, bring people closer to Christ. Two, I want to build a community of believers in the school and just promote generally virtuous behavior amongst the growing youth.
That's amazing. And lastly, where do you see yourself in 5 years as an educator?
All right, so I'm going to give you 3 different answers because the Lord's got his own plans and I'm just here for the ride. So originally, when I set out to do education, I wanted to be an administrator. And I was very passionate because I saw growing up all the different ways that the education system fails some and just helps others. And I was one of those that was able to take advantage of the system to go above and beyond. And so it's always been a dream of mine to get not only into administration, but high administration, like a superintendent or maybe even state level, and be able to make those sweeping changes that can benefit so many people. And so my long-term goal right now is I want to become administration, but teaching is also what I love to do. Like if I had a passion, it's education, right? And so do I want to give up some of that love I have in teaching to go and do more of the politics of education, right? And I was actually just talking with some of my students about this today is, who knows what the Lord has planned. In a few years, Lord willing, my wife and I will start having kids. And maybe the idea is instead of educating young minds here, I educate my own children at home as like a stay-at-home parent. So who knows?
Gosh, that's beautiful. And that was our last question. I want to thank you, Mr. Murz, for coming and interviewing with us and sharing a little bit more about your day-to-day life. And I want to thank everybody at home for listening and watching. And this is Amia Gary signing out.